Alright guys, so I just lost one in the hole while I wait for some more fish to show back up. I'm going to talk about my 5 favorite baits for whitefish on Lake Simcoe. There's so many options and there's a ton of variety out there. My 5 favorite baits are going to be different than another guy's 5 favorite baits, but I'll talk to you about mine for sure. So the first one is going to be a tube. I use this for more aggressive whitefish when they're higher up in the water column. It's more almost like I'm searching for lake trout and catching whitefish, but I catch a ton of whiteys on it. Kind of let it just hang high in the water column, waiting for fish to come up. Same as you would for lake trout, really. So right now I'm in 100 feet of water and I have a tube down about 50 feet down, so halfway through the water column. It almost acts like a decoy. It brings fish in to kind of see what it is up there, and you can often catch them on the bottom bait, or with the tube you can catch them up high. They don't eat a swim bait or a lipless crankbait as frequently, I should say, as they hit this. It's a little more subtle. You can just reel it slow, tentacles flare, and just kind of keep their attention. But I always add a stinger when I'm fishing for whitefish. So I tie this one just right to the eye of the jig head before I slide it in, and it sits kind of just perfectly right at the end of the tentacles. So when they come up and just kind of nip at it, which is what they often do, they get hooked on that stinger. I take a lot of fish on this tube. Next up would be a Williams. This is probably one of the most common whitefish lures out here. Has been for years and years. This is a smaller version. Most guys use the bigger version. I do as well. But when they're really finicky, I do like the small one. A lot of guys, especially the old timers, they like having a bead on the bottom treble. I kind of just replace it with a Jensen egg, where I just kind of feed it onto the treble and then put it back on the split ring, and it kind of sits there. It carries scent. It's a nice green color, which the whitefish seem to like on this lake. So this one here, really, you'll just let it down to bottom and just rip jig it. It's pretty simple. Probably the most effective way. If I didn't have a sonar, that's probably the bait that I'd use. Sometimes when they're around, they're not really reacting to the rip jigging. I'll just lay it on bottom and just kind of gentle lifts and let it fall back down, and it flutters. Let's bring it up and it just flutters back down. That's a really good bait as well. Next would be a jigging wrap or Nils Master, some sort of glide bait. This one's here is the Jigging Shad Rap. I've got kind of a color we painted on it just to imitate a goby. I use this in shallow and deep water. Variety of colors work. I personally like the goby pattern, which they don't really make, so we kind of made it our own. Just some greens, browns, and blacks in there, a mottled kind of color. And this again is just gentle lifts. You want to let it crash bottom, stir up some mud, gentle lifts. And what the wings on the back of this will do is help it glide. So as it sinks, it's going to go down and just glide, usually in circles, but it's that glide that you want. And just kind of lift it, let it drop, let it swing, and pause it. And most of the time they'll hit it on the pause. You have 3 possible hooks to connect with: back hook, front hook, treble. And most of the whitefish, I'd say, come on the bottom or the front treble, and that's a really good one out there. Right, next up, I would say the Meegs, or a bad boy. These are kind of taken over for whitefish on the lake here, especially since the introduction of gobies. I talked about the same lure in my lake trout video, and it's definitely one of the best producing baits out there right now. So this one's just plain. So what it's going to do, you want to add something to the back of it. The most common thing is a tube. A lot of guys will use a live minnow or a small minnow type bait, like plastic. So you thread that tube on there, and it's front heavy. So when you jig it, it's just going to look like a feeding baitfish, or in this case a goby. You want that tube just to give a little bit more action to it. The tentacles on the back of it just kind of flare. It gives it a tail look. But what you want to do is just crash it on bottom a little bit. I'll often do bigger jigs just to get fish into the area, because it stirs up the muck on the bottom and they come to see what's stirring it up. And then at that point it'll just be little tiny lifts, like a couple inches maximum. You just want to crash it on bottom and then I'll just lift it just a touch off bottom and let it sit there. And most of the time they'll come up and just slurp it up while it's paused. These are the baits that can take 20, 25, 30 fish in a day when they're really on the feed. This is a really great bait. My favorite for whitefish on Simcoe is the vibrato. It's pretty new in the last couple of years. Again, it's a lure I talked about in my lake trout video. It's such a simple bait. The way it works, I don't know if you can really see the profile of it there. Wider on the bottom and narrow on the top. So what that'll do is when you jig it up, it'll make it shimmy. And then when it goes back down, it shimmies as well. I had a split ring to it. You can add a snap swivel or something. It doesn't come with any of those. You will want to put a snap swivel or a split ring on, just to give it that freedom of movement. So this is going to be really simple. Again, you drop it down, you jig it up off bottom, it does the shimmy, you crash it. That's the big thing for whitefish, is that for the most part they're bottom feeders. They will chase smelts and stuff around, but for the most part they like to feed on bottom. Stir up the bottom as much as you can. They'll come to investigate and try and dig up worms and whatever invertebrates and stuff that are down there. When you see this, again, a lot of people have a tendency to overwork it. You can reel it away from them and make it chase it, the same as a lake trout, but it's not as consistent as fishing it on bottom. So you just want to crash it. Again, just little gentle lifts up and down, gentle lifts up and down, gentle lift up and down. You want to hit bottom and lift it up just a touch off bottom and pause it. And most of the time, again, on that pause, it'll be dunk, or as soon as you go to make your next lift, they're kind of there ready to slurp it up, and you'll hit them with that. So those are my 5 favorite baits for whitefish on Simcoe. If you have questions, comments, you want to drop your 5 favorite, that's what gives me the most success out here. I hope it helps you out. Again, if you have questions, let me know and I'll try and answer them. Thanks for watching.